Hi there. I am the CRM Ninja, and on today's episode of the Oops Factor, I have the wonderful Simon Owen. Welcome to the show, Simon.
Oh, hi everyone.
It's
Thanks
great to
very
have
much
you
for the
on.
invite, E1.
It's great. I mean, we've been talking. I remember I met you last year. I was impressed by how tall you were.
I've been this tall for quite a while now, probably since I was about 18. Yeah, I'm 6'4".
Yes, I have to say, it's 6'2". There are not many people who are taller than me, apart from my little brother. I should say younger brother, if he ever listens to this. But yes, at 6'4", you were decidedly taller than me, which was noticeable.
It is a surprise though when you meet somebody taller, isn't it? I've got a cousin who's 6'7" and don't see each other very often, but I always forget that he's taller than me as well, and it's always a bit strange looking up to somebody.
My brother is 6'7.5" and broad. I always joke that I know that he's standing behind me when it's a sunny day and I'm in the shadow.
Yeah. Yeah, it is funny.
It works well. So I wanted to ask you about your interest in cars, because I understand you have an interest in cars.
I do have an interest in cars, and I accidentally, I suppose, built a very small collection. It's not like one of these sprawling, massive garages, but got some interesting things, I think.
Okay.
So my newest car is 4.5 years old at the moment. I bought a Tesla Model S a few years back. And I really liked it. I thought I'd love to say that it was purely environmental reasons, but it was actually the technology part that drew me most to it. And I'd been on holiday a few years before that. Must be 3 or 4 years before that, and in Los Angeles, and saw a Tesla dealership there, and thought, oh, the great big screen in the middle. This looks a bit weird. Never dreaming that I'd have one of these weird cars, but was strangely drawn to it, and went for a test drive. I thought, oh, this is a bit fun. So yeah, ended up with that most recently. About 7 or 8 years ago now. I like many people, I had a poster of a car on my wall. I had a model car, and I thought, oh, I'd love one day in my life to own that car. So I did, and so I've got a 1987 Porsche 911 Cabriolet, which is rather fun. So yeah,
that's probably quite the opposite of a Tesla in terms of gadgetry.
It's loud, it's makes a lot of noise, it's not that great fuel economy. It's got power steering, ish. Some gadgetry, electric hood, but not a lot more than that. Yeah, so and that's really fun. That I bought that thinking, oh, maybe I'll keep it for a year, and then at least I've scratched that itch, that childhood dream. But I've still got it at the moment, and had various bits of work done on it over the years. And yeah, I don't think I'm ready to get rid of it yet. It always puts a smile on my face.
They are some quite nice vehicles.
The last vehicle I've got is kind of weird, and it might be something that most people actually haven't heard of at all. But there's an old British manufacturer called Comma, and I've got an old camper van. It's a 1970 camper van. It's a bit like a VW one, but different, British, different design. But that's very odd.
Steering wheel on the right rather than left, sort of thing. Steering wheel on the right rather than left, sort of thing.
Yeah, steering wheel's in the right place, but it's very hard. There's no power steering in that. There's no power anything. Yeah, it gets about, I don't know, 17 miles to the gallon, and I might go 60 downhill with a prevailing wind. But yeah, you got to kind of enjoy the journey rather than get in there quickly.
That's true. Nice little collection. So what now would be, if you could buy any car now, what would you go for?
I don't really know, probably something still electric, maybe a newer Tesla at some point, something I have, I have got. I don't know if you saw them at the launch event. There was a big space age looking truck, Tesla, the Cybertruck.
I did see Cybertruck. Yes, the launch event for that.
And on a bit of a whim, it was ridiculous, really. And I don't know if it'll ever come to Britain, but I did put a deposit on. It was only $100, but I've technically still got a deposit on one of those. That might be kind of fun.
It might be. I understand, according to the Space Elite, somebody told me recently that it's unlikely the Cybertruck will come to the UK in its current form because it doesn't meet the DVLA safety requirements.
No, exactly. And it's far too big, I think, in its current form as well for British roads.
Depends where in Britain, but yes. So we'll definitely see. If you do get a Cybertruck turning up, I'm expecting an invitation to come along for a ride. Just making this aware, right? This is going to be live.
Definitely.
So moving on from vehicles to your oops factor, what do you have to share?
Well, I was thinking when we spoke and when the invite came through, I was thinking, what I thought, what of the things that I've done wrong? What's the biggest lesson, or what's the biggest oops that I think I've had? And so I thought I'd share this one. And it's not something that I've spoken about to too many people, and certainly not all that frequently. But about
you are aware that this is going to be live on YouTube for public consumption.
Yeah, that's fine. It's not a problem. But I thought this might be a good one to share. So must be about 13 years ago, maybe even a little bit longer, 14, 15 years. I'd been scuba diving for about 2 or 3 years by that stage. And I'd done
hence my
stuff.
picture, by the way.
I
do have the interest, but I thought a scuba diving picture was much more interesting than a Tesla picture.
and I did some holiday diving, so some clear, nice blue waters, Egypt, Australia, that kind of thing, seeing lots of lovely fish. But a lot of the diving that I did was around the UK, so mostly kind of south coast along the Channel, Swanage, Brighton, Dover.
Water slightly cooler than Egypt and Australia.
A little bit
like 1 or 2 degrees.
A little bit murkier, yeah. Or the Orkneys as well. So Scapa Flow in the Orkneys, that was another favourite destination. But my oops was in Dover. So as you can imagine, lots of big ships, container ships, oil tankers. So rather than being able to just come up to the surface and drift along, and then the boat comes and picks you up, which you might do in a less populous place, you've got to go back to the shot, come up the line, and then the boat is there. So you're visible, you're not going to get run over by anything big. So that brings some challenges with it on its own. The other challenge that I had this was March sort of time. It was early in the year. I'd not been diving over winter, probably for about 6 months. So I was a bit out of practice, but that was another key factor. And things didn't go according to plan on this dive. So we were diving a wreck that was in 42 meters of water, so pretty deep. That's pretty deep. Spending a bit of time down there. So if you're doing a shallower dive or a shorter dive, you can go down, you can do your dive, and then you can come up, and then you stop for a little while before you come out, and then you just rise the rest of the way. But this was a decompression dive, so we were going to stay down for longer. We had 2 tanks on our back, we had another one slung to the side. We were going to stay down a while, and then you've got to come up in stages, come up a lot slower, just to let all the gases come out at a reasonable rate, so they don't come out fast and you don't get the bends. So there was complexity there as well. We got to the bottom, we did our dive around this shot, and it was a wreck that was well known for having lots of crockery. It went down in the First World War. So there was lots of things that you could bring up, some souvenirs potentially of the dive. Now, that was a distraction as well. And that need to return to the shot, well, I was the guy who tied off at the bottom, and I had a reel so we could get back to it.
So you had a length of of cord or whatever it was attached to the bottom of it, and you would go out essentially to the length of that, but not losing that because you would need to go back to your starting point in order to be able to ascend.
Precisely. Yeah. So all of these things added up. So not diving for a while, being out of practice, focusing on reeling this thing in maybe was another distraction. Being kind of not really dive fit. I was breathing heavier as well. So I was going through my gas faster than I needed to. And all of a sudden I could hear a little squeak and I could feel my breaths start to get slowly tighter. And it didn't take long until I realized that actually I was about to run out of gas at 42 meters down, and I wasn't able to return straight to the surface. So I needed to do 20 minutes of decompression stops on the way back up.
I'm assuming here, I really hope this is the case, that you had a dive buddy as per procedure for diving.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was with two other divers. We were diving as a three. So I went up to him, signaled out of air, and he looked at me confused because we dive together quite a lot. So we would practice these things. And he goes, well, we're not practicing that today. What are you doing? And I went, oh! And he could see that my eyes were like this big. And oh, okay. So he handed off his octopus and gave me the other regulator. And all of a sudden I could breathe again. So pressure started to go down, started to relax a little bit. Breathing was still
very important to keep relaxed, and that the last thing you want to do is panic in those situations.
Exactly. But it spooked me. So I was still breathing quite heavily. We'd started to go back to the shop so we could go back up to the surface. So that was end of dive, quite sensibly. As we started to ascend, I was still breathing quite heavily. And what actually happened is we ran down his gas as well, and that started to tighten too. So these cylinders that we had slung on our sides, they're different mixtures of oxygen or different concentrations of oxygen, and you can only kind of have certain amounts of oxygen at certain levels. Otherwise, you get a thing called oxygen toxicity, and you can fit underwater. So I was still about 5 meters off being able to switch to my thing. So we rapidly rose to that depth, and then I was able to give him back his air, put mine in, and then slowly come back up according to the stops that we were due to take anyway. But that last stop at 6 meters for 15, 20 minutes, whatever it was the longest stop of my life. Just thinking about all of the things that could have gone wrong, thinking that I could have been down there at the bottom of the channel, drifting away, well, unconscious at first, but probably dead afterwards. It felt like it was very close that day. But we got out, we got safe, just kind of relaxed a little bit. And
so I'm assuming from the sound of it, your decompression stops went fine. There weren't any problems with it. And when you came out at the top of the shot, the boat was there and you didn't hit your head, for instance, on the bottom with it.
No, all that part was smooth, fortunately. So got out, got dekitted, just sat quietly and reflected, relaxed, and went for a swift beer when we got back on land. But
I can imagine you were sponsoring.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there was lots of thanks that day.
Yes, I can imagine that. I mean, I've never done diving like that. I did do some more basic diving. I'm sure you are much more qualified than I ever was in diving, in the diving arena. But yes, definitely read stories and heard stories from people, learning to dive and such, and going on dives and things like that, or when they put the wrong calculations in their dive computers and problems come. Do tell me, do you have like a digital dive computer? Were you doing it the old-fashioned way with working in a house and pens?
I had a computer, but backup tables as well, all kind of written on a slate, so I could refer to them if the computer went. Yeah.
Wow, that really is a story.
That was a big oops. Lots of mistakes made, but lots of things that went right as well. So lots of lessons learned.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask you. So what have you learned from that? Not just specifically for diving, but that you apply to your life in general, or do you tell people that they can apply to their lives?
So I was reflecting about this, and I think a lot of it is really transferable. So the key things for me were really surrounding people with great people and people you trust. That's kind of a lesson for life, really.
Yeah.
I thought there's another one really about, it's good to stretch yourself, it's good to challenge yourself, but I think you've got to be a bit honest with yourself as well. So if you feel that you're stretching yourself too far, or you need help, that you speak up, you kind of ask for that help, or what I should have done really is that job of reeling off from the line. I could say, well, actually, could you do that today, so I can just focus on the dive? I've not dived for a while. So actually being honest with yourself and asking for help where you need it is really key.
I think that's a challenge for a lot of people, because it makes them seem
Definitely.
like they don't know and they're not able to, and people see in their mind that it's a detraction and it's no good for them. Whereas I know that's definitely some of us, for, if you don't know, you should ask, because we can learn from each other for it and get better for it. And why should I do something where I don't really know what I'm doing when I could ask you to do it and you're much better at it than I am, and it would be much better all around?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we can all learn from each other, can't we? So, and we tend to in most situations, but every now and again you think, oh yeah, I can do that. I'll push myself that bit further. You just got to listen to yourself, can pay attention to yourself, I think. And the last one is about prioritizing. So focusing on that very single thing that you need to do in that moment is really key. So I've got a bit of a flaw, I think, sometimes about trying to take on too much and trying to juggle all these different priorities. But really, in that moment especially, and it's kind of something that I try and do better at, is really prioritize what's the thing I need to do now. There's a load of other stuff that I need to do afterwards, but what's the next important task that I need to do? I think that's the other thing as well. Just deal with things one at a time, wherever possible. It's not always possible, but yeah, that's the other lesson, I think.
I think there's some really key lessons in there. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing them with us.
You're welcome. Very welcome.
It was great to have you on. Viewers, we hope that you've enjoyed this episode and have learned some valuable lessons from it. Feel free to check out the rest of the Oops Factor playlist, subscribe to the channel, and take a look at the blog. And if you would like to come on and share your own Oops Factor story, hit the link in the description somewhere below, put in your details, and I'd love to have you on the show. But above all, have an amazing day.